Okay, so in this example, we're going to go through problem 1-3 in chapter 1 of your book. We'll walk through how to use formulas and formatting things. And as I go through this example, I'll put some tips on the side like you can see now. So let's get started. When I'm doing accounting work, I like to read the instructions or try to figure out what question is being asked first thing. So problem 1-3, it's on page 38 and 39 of your books. The instructions say to prepare Best Buy's income statement, prepare Best Buy's retained earnings statement, and prepare a balance sheet. All of those as of February 28th, 2009. Okay, so now we know what we're trying to accomplish. Let's go read the details of our problem. So the following financial data were adapted from the annual report of Best Buy Inc. for the period ending February 28th, 2009. Okay, so these are a list of our accounts, the list of dollar amounts applicable to each account, and that should give us enough information to build our financial statement. So our first statement is an income statement. And I can't type today, apparently. And this is for the year ending February 28th, 2009. Okay, so income statement. Remember, our income statement is revenue minus expenses. And so first thing we're going to do is just give ourselves a category for revenue. And then we want to go through our account list and see what is a revenue account. And when you're going through things like this, it's pretty simple to just, if it says revenue, it's a revenue account. If it says expense, it's an expense account. The exception to that would be sales. Sales are always going to be a revenue account. But that's a really easy way to tell for this book what belongs on the income statement versus the balance sheet. Okay, so as I said, sales is always going to be there, so let's put sales in there. And then AP, accounts payable, capital stock, cash, COGS, expense, inventory, investment, asset, expense, liability, other revenue. Okay, so let's put other revenue in here. And I should have put the amount when I did this, so I'll do that now. Other revenue, 7. And I didn't see anything else in there, so let's do total revenue. Okay, so here's our first formula. All formulas in Google Sheets, you can start with an equal sign. You can also start with the plus sign or a minus sign, but I do not want you to do that. Please use an equal sign. Okay, and Google Sheets is nice and it gives us prompts. So this is saying sum cell C6 through cell C7. And our sales, I'm going to close that suggestion. Our sales is in cell C6 and our other revenue is in cell C7. And so if we sum those two cells, C6 through C7, we will get our total revenue. Okay, another way you could do this is you could say equals cell C6 plus cell C7. Okay, they give you the same result. I'm going to use sum. Okay, and then we have our expense category. So let's go through our account list, same way we just did. AP, capital stock, cash, cost of goods sold, income tax expense. Notice it says expense, so we're probably okay to add it. Interest expense, can add that. inventory, investments, goodwill, other assets, other expenses. $250. Liabilities, revenue, PP&E, revenue, sales, selling, general, and administrative expenses. Okay, so this is everything that has said expense on it. So let's add those up. We get 10,000. And remember, our net income is going to be equal to our revenue minus our expenses. Okay, so in this example, we're getting a revenue of $35,020. And if we go back to our book, we have a check figure there that says net income is $1,003. But we have 35,000. Okay, so because the book gives us a check figure, we can really easily see what our difference is. And we can say, what's our net income minus the number from our book, 1,003, gives us 34,017. If we go back to our chart of accounts list, we see that cost of goods sold is 34,017. Okay, I did this on purpose so that you could see that it's not always expenses, but it generally is always expenses. Okay, so what we need to do is we want to add cost of goods sold. And that is 34,017. And if we update our formula, so we're summing C12 to C15, and we need to go from C11 to C15. Okay. Now we get 1,003, just like our check figure in the book says. So I would say our income statement is correct. All right, now you'll notice I didn't do any formatting here. And I would suggest you try to do the same thing when you're working on your stuff. Formatting can take so much time, and if you get everything set up, it's easier to see what your formatting ought to look like after you're set up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and format this now, and this ought to teach you a few things that you can do. So I like to have indentations here, so I'm going to insert a row to the left, or a column to the left. And I want this column to be really small. I'm going to resize it, and I want it to be a width of 20 pixels. Okay, and then I want my sales, other revenue, and total revenue to be in column C instead. And so I'm going to highlight all of those, and you can just click, hold, and drag and move them over. Or you can right-click and cut and paste. And there are keyboard shortcuts for that too. But I'm not going to go over keyboard shortcuts. Okay, and then just to make this a little prettier, I'm going to resize this column to be 20 pixels so that it all fits in this nice thing. And I will delete these, put the tips right next to each other. Okay, our income statement, I'm going to merge that across all three of these cells so that it centers across all of them. To do that with this button here. I'm going to do that with this one as well. And I'm going to highlight both of those, and at the same time, I'm going to align them center. And let's make them bold. And I should say bold is up here on your menu bar as well. Okay, now that's looking a little bit better, but I still want to differentiate that this is a total line, this is a total line, and this is our net income. So typically any total is going to be, by the way, if I click in this cell and press Control on my keyboard, or Command if you have a Mac, and click in this other cell, it will highlight both of them at the same time. Then this box will give us borders, and I want a top border for both of those. So when you see a line like that, it represents there is a calculation beneath it. It could be a subtraction, it could be addition, it could be anything. Typically when you see a line, that means that there's a total. Okay. Oh, so the other thing I want to do is I want to justify these to the right. That just helps separate them out. And I'm going to put 3 spaces afterwards. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so now the only thing that I don't like is we only have thousands of 5 digits here, so that's not a big deal. But when you're looking at millions or potentially billions of dollars, it can be kind of difficult to read the true amount the way our numbers look like this. So let's highlight all of our numbers and come up here, and let's change our format to a number format. And in this case, we don't really care because everything is 0, so we can press this arrow to get rid of our decimal places. And let's do some formatting on net income. We want a top border and a bottom border. Okay, so typically in accounting, you're either going to see a double border like that, 1 on top, 1 on bottom, or you will see 1 on top and 2 on bottom. I don't really have a preference for what you do. I typically do 1 on top, 1 on bottom. You could do whatever you want. Okay, so here's our income statement. It's formatted. It looks pretty. And now we get to move on to number 2. Okay, so number 2 is prepare Best Buy's retained earnings statement for the year ended February 28, 2009. Note, retained earnings of March 1st, 2008, the year before. During the year, Best Buy paid dividends of $2.22. Okay, so now we're preparing a retained earnings statement. And this is, again, for the year ended February 28, 2009. And okay, so retained earnings statement. We begin with our beginning retained earnings. I'm just going to put RE for retained earnings. So our beginning retained earnings, it gives us in our instructions, it said it was $39.33. We add to our retained earnings our net income. Now, I don't know if you remember what our net income was, but if we go back to this other tab, we could see that it's 1,003. Okay, and here's where formulas and referential formulas come in. Instead of typing 1,003 right there, I want you to do equals, go to this other tab, and notice it's giving us a tab location now, and we want to select net income. So it's saying I want to go to this tab in cell D18 and return whatever's there. So once you've got that selected, you can hit enter, and now it'll bring that over for us. So the cool part about doing this is, let's say that we hadn't realized that we'd forgotten cost of goods sold. I'm going to delete that. So our income was 35,020, and we went to our retained earnings statement and typed in 35,020. And then at the end of all of our work, we realized that, hey, that's not correct. We would have to go through and change our net income. We would have to change our net income here, which is going to give us a retained earnings number. And then in our balance sheet, we would have to change that again. So I'm going to give you an example of that at the end. I'm going to do that and show how that all works. Okay, but for now, let's just finish this. So the other thing it gave us was that we paid dividends. So we can subtract our dividends of 222. Okay, and then this gives us our increase in retained earnings. So again, I'm going to use a formula equals adding net income less dividends, so minus dividends, gives us 781. And then our ending retained earnings should be our beginning retained earnings plus our increase in retained earnings. Okay, so awesome. We have our ending retained earnings. We don't have a check figure for this, so we're just going to go on and continue. Before we do that, though, let's do some formatting. So I'm going to highlight all of those and make them numbers. I don't want the actual number sign. Okay, so this is a calculation. So let's put a border there. And our ending retained earnings, let's highlight like that. Resize column to be 20. Let's delete those. Let's merge those. Let's center that and bold. Oh, I should show you guys that. If I click right here and I double click between a cell, it's going to auto fit everything. Now I'm not going to do that because I don't want these two columns to auto fit. So I'm just going to highlight these three. And if I double click this line in between, it's going to change the formatting to where it fits the width of the cells. And I don't like it because of these two. Oh, I don't like that typo either. So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag that over. Okay. One other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert one to the right. I'm going to resize this to be 20. Going to cut those and move them. That, I think, looks better. Okay. Ending retained earnings. Let's see. Our tips here are to use formulas. And that's it. I don't really have any tips for retained earnings. So let's move on to our third one, which is to prepare a balance sheet. Okay, so now we have a balance sheet and February 28, 2009. Okay, so remember our balance sheet, we start with assets, specifically current assets. Then we go to current, let me see. Oh, you guys don't do current assets yet. Okay, so we just start with assets. So let's get assets up here. Then we go to liabilities, and then we go to stockholders' equity. And it's important to remember that assets equals liabilities plus equity. And that's going to be our next check figure to make sure we did everything right. Okay, so assets are something that create a claim. So let's go through our list again. Accounts payable, that's where we owe somebody. Capital stock, that is a form of equity. Cash is an asset. And cash is 498. Okay, cash is an asset because we have a claim to something that's valuable. Cost of goods sold is an income statement, expense, income, inventory. Okay, so we can sell our inventory. So that is a claim. So that would be an asset. Investments. That's a claim. So we can count that. I'm just going to put goodwill here. That is also an asset, and that one's an easy one because it tells us it's an asset. Other assets Also an easy one because it tells us. Let's see, expense, liability, revenue, property, plant, and equipment. Okay, property, plant, and equipment for like a construction business would probably be the assets that they use to make money. So that's going to be considered an asset. Receivables, that's when other people owe us money. So that will be an asset. Sales, SG&A. Okay, so we have our assets here. Let's do total assets. Let's put that over here. We're going to do a sum, add those up. Okay, let's go through liabilities. Okay, accounts payable. Capital stock, cash, COGS, expense, inventory, investment, goodwill, asset, expense, other liabilities. I should explain, accounts payable is where you owe somebody money short term. So, for example, if you, I don't know, told somebody that you were going to purchase something from them, but hadn't actually sent them a check, or I guess in this world, your Venmo transfer, that would be an account payable because you owe somebody other money. Let's see, receivables, sales, that's looks like all of our, oh, why did I not put dollar amounts here? And other liabilities was what? Okay, so let's sum those again. That is our total. And now we have equity. Equity, stockholders' equity, those terms are interchangeable, so feel free to use them however you would like. We have capital stock. And that is it. So capital stock and retained earnings. This was 4997. Okay, and our retained earnings, you'll remember over here, so 4714 in retained earnings. But again, I do not want to type that. I want to use a referential formula. So I'm going to do equals 4714. It's pointing to this tab, P1-32 and cell E9. Hit enter, and that'll get you that. And we are not balanced. So let's go through our balance sheet. Remember, our assets equals liabilities plus equity. So the cool thing about Excel is you can actually do that. You can say equals our total assets equals liabilities plus equity. Okay, that's our accounting equation. We've got it right up here. And if I hit enter, it's going to tell us false. D13 does not equal that plus that. Okay, so we have some work to do to figure that out. Another way you could do that is to say our assets minus our liabilities minus our equity should give us the balance that we're looking for, and it doesn't. So we're off $4,700. So somewhere we've made a decent sized mistake. Oh, capital stock is not 4997. That should have been 442. Okay, so now we're off $180. But I think we're okay with everything we have here. So I'm just going to clean up the formatting a little bit so that this is easier for me to read and try to figure out what's wrong. And that is going to be a top and a bottom. And I'm going to move this down there, and I'm going to say, no, I'll leave that blank for now. I want all of these to be commas. Okay, now let's do that and resize this one. Take all my assets and move them over. Take that and move it over. And I'm going to right justify that. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to right justify this one. Do that here. I'm going to, whoops, right justify that one. Okay, now I'm a little happier with the way this looks. You will get the point that I am kind of a stickler for formatting. I think it's really important to make things look good so that people can more easily understand what they're looking at. Okay, so we finish this really fast. Okay, so we're off by $180, and we have to figure out why we're off by $180. So our first thing was really simple. I just typed in the wrong capital stock. Let's go through this and make sure I didn't make a mistake somewhere else. So cash 498, that is correct. Inventory 4573, that is correct. Investments 406, that is correct. Goodwill 2698. Other assets 1429. PPE 4174. Receivables 1868. Accounts payable 4997. Other liabilities 5673. Capital stock 442. Retained earnings 4714. That is a link to here. Okay, so we didn't have a check figure there, so that could be wrong. But we have our check figure here, so we know that everything with this is correct. So we don't have to change anything there. We know that this is correct. So our beginning retained earnings, March 1st, 2008, is 3933. That's correct. Dividends, correct. That formula is correct. So I think that our ending retained earnings is correct, and we have a problem somewhere here. So here's a little trick for you. Anytime you have a check figure, or not a check figure, I guess this is a check figure. Anytime you have a balance that's incorrect, if you're able to divide it equally by 9, whoops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, so in this case, it is equally divisible by 9. That typically means that you have a typo. So let's go through our data here, and I've already done this, so I'm cheating. But 4753, if I change that, that creates a balanced equation. So in this case, the error is in our textbook. That inventory balance should be 4753, not 4573. So I picked this problem out intentionally so that I could kind of walk through how to troubleshoot when that happens, because it's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when. You will have mistakes in data, and it's going to create inaccuracies in your statements. So that happens sometimes, and it's important to be able to walk through how to figure that out. Now, figuring that out, that it was inventories, I mean, the way to do that would be to look at your inventory balance in your system and see if it matches up. So it's a little more complicated than just changing two numbers around like we did, but it is going to happen eventually. So it is worth understanding that it will happen. And I think the important point for you to know is that you need to go back to your accounting system to make sure stuff is correct when that happens. Okay, so we've gone through our first homework assignment. One thing that I want to share with you is here's our homework template, and you will all have a copy of this, and I just want you to fill in anything that's gray. Okay, now I do want to say that I've set this up so that you can understand what proper formatting looks like, and kind of have the ability to keep your sheets clean. And as we go through the semester, I will give you less and less. For example, here, I've added this formula to add those, and I've added this formula to subtract this from this. And in the future, I won't be doing stuff like that. And eventually I'll get to where I don't have any formatting in here at all. You will get a blank spreadsheet and have to work through it on your own. And you will be graded on the format and the content and the accuracy of what you're doing. That's where we're going to get to by the end of the class. Excel or Sheets or Numbers or any other spreadsheet software is a really important part of managing. And so we're going to do all of our homework here so you can learn it really well. Okay. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the week, and we'll talk to you soon.